The smell of old leather and fresh ink. That's what I remember most about that Tuesday morning in Mr. Harrison's law office. I was sitting there with my reading glasses perched on my nose, staring at papers that made my blood run cold. My retirement fund statements, my house deed, documents I thought I knew by heart. But there it was, clear as day, my son Michael's name listed as co-owner on my property deed. The property I'd been paying for since 1987. The house where I raised him and his sister after their daddy passed. $500,000. Gone. Just like that. Transferred from my retirement account to help him invest in real estate, he'd said. But he never told me he'd put his name on my deed, too. Let me tell you something about trust. When you're 82 years old, you think you know who people really are, especially your own children. I raised Michael from the time he could barely walk, changed his diapers, sat up all night when he had pneumonia at age 7, worked double shifts at the county hospital so he could go to that fancy college in Atlanta. He was my baby boy, my firstborn, the one who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard and call them Mama's sunshine flowers. That little boy grew up to steal $500,000 from his own mother. It started 6 months ago. Michael came over for Sunday dinner like he always did, but something was different. He kept fidgeting with his coffee cup, wouldn't look me straight in the eye. Finally, he cleared his throat and said he had an opportunity, a real estate investment that could help secure both our futures. He talked about property values rising, about how we could flip a house together and make good money. Mama, he said, I found this perfect house. Needs some work, but it's in a good neighborhood. We could go in on it together. Use some of your retirement money as the down payment, and I'll handle all the renovation work. I should have known. Lord knows I should have seen it coming. But when your child looks you in the eye and talks about our future and building something together, you want to believe. You need to believe. So I said yes. I signed the papers he brought over the next week. He explained it all so fast. Investment partnerships, property deeds, tax implications. My head was spinning, but he kept saying, "Don't worry, Mama, I've got this all figured out. Trust me." Trust him. Those words echo in my mind now like a broken record. The first red flag should have been when he insisted on handling everything himself. No need for me to come to the closing, he said. No need for me to meet with his lawyer or real estate agent. He'd take care of all the paperwork and just keep me updated. You've worked hard enough, Mama. Let me handle the business side of things. It sounded so thoughtful, so caring. What it really was calculated. For months, everything seemed fine. Michael would call every week with updates. The renovation is going great, Mama. We replaced the kitchen cabinets. New flooring goes in next week. This house is going to be beautiful. He'd show me pictures on his phone, before and after shots of rooms being transformed. I was proud of him, proud of us. Here I was at 82, still building wealth, still planning for the future, still relevant. But then the calls started getting shorter. The updates became vague. When I asked about the timeline for selling, he'd say things like, "These things take time, Mama. You know how the market is." When I asked about our expected profit, he'd change the subject to his kids or work. Red flags were waving all around me, but I kept making excuses for them. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you're still here listening to an old woman's mistakes, maybe you understand what I'm talking about. Subscribe if you want to hear how much worse this gets. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago. I was having coffee with my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, and she mentioned seeing Michael at the Kroger with a woman I didn't recognize. She was wearing a beautiful diamond ring, Mrs. Patterson said. They looked so happy together. That's when I learned my son was engaged. Engaged to a woman I'd never met, using money from a house I'd never seen, bought with funds from my retirement account. When I confronted him that evening, the mask finally came off. "Mama, I was going to tell you about Sarah," he said, but his voice had lost that warm, caring tone. It was cold now, businesslike. And about the house. We're actually going to live in it instead of flipping it. It made more financial sense. Live in it. The house I'd helped him buy with my life savings. The house that was supposed to be our investment together. What about my money, Michael? What about the profit we were supposed to split? That's when he dropped the bomb that shattered everything I thought I knew about my son. "Well, Mama, technically it's not just your house anymore. My name is on the deed too. Equal ownership. So really, I'm just living in my own house." Equal ownership of a house purchased entirely with my money, a house I'd never even seen the inside of. The room started spinning. My chest felt tight. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding. "Michael, show me the deed. Show me the paperwork." But he just shrugged and said he'd bring it by sometime. Sometime never came. Instead, he started avoiding my calls. Sunday dinners suddenly stopped. When I drove by his old apartment, the landlord told me he'd moved out 2 months ago, moved into his new house, my house. That's when I knew I needed help, real help. I called Mr. Harrison, the lawyer who'd handled my late husband's estate. Sweet man, probably 65, with kind eyes and the patience of Job. When I explained the situation, I could hear the concern in his voice. "Mrs. Price, I think you need to come in as soon as possible. Bring any documentation you have." Someone once told me there are rules that change after 60. One of them says that sacrifice without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. I wish I'd known that 30 years ago. If you want to know what those rules are, it's in the description. Sitting in Mr. Harrison's office last Tuesday, surrounded by the smell of old leather and fresh ink, I watched him review document after document. Bank statements showing the $500,000 withdrawal from my retirement account. Property deeds with both Michael's name and mine listed as owners. Loan applications I never knew existed, using my house as collateral. Purchase agreements I'd never seen. As Mr. Harrison spread them across his desk, I realized the scope of what my son had done went far beyond what I'd imagined. "Mrs. Price," Mr. Harrison said gently, "I need you to understand something. Your son didn't just put his name on the new property deed. He's also somehow added himself to the deed of your current home, the house you've lived in for 37 years. The words hit me like a physical blow. My home, the house where I'd raised my children, where I'd cried when my husband died, where I'd celebrated birthdays and holidays and graduations, the house where I kept my mother's china and my grandmother's quilts. Michael had put his name on that deed too. How is that possible, I asked, though my voice sounded far away, even to me. Mr. Harrison explained about power of attorney documents, about legal loopholes, about how someone with access to your personal information could potentially commit this kind of fraud. "The good news is that this appears to be illegal," he said. "The bad news is that proving it and undoing it will take time and money." Time and money. Two things I was running short on. At 82, how many legal battles could I realistically fight? How many years did I have left to recover from this betrayal? And the money? Well, Michael had already taken most of that. But here's what Mr. Harrison said next that changed everything. Mrs. Price, I've seen cases like this before. Usually it's strangers who commit financial elder abuse. When it's family members, it's harder to prosecute, but it's also more devastating. What your son has done isn't just theft. It's identity theft, fraud, and elder abuse all rolled into one. The law takes this very seriously. Elder abuse. The words hung in the air like smoke. I'd always thought elder abuse happened to other people, lonely old folks without family to look out for them. Not to mothers whose sons called them every Sunday, not to women who still drove themselves to church and cooked their own meals and managed their own finances. But there I was, 82 years old, sitting in a lawyer's office because my own child had stolen my future. The drive home from Mr. Harrison's office felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. Every red light gave me more time to think about what came next. Did I press charges against my own son? Did I try to work this out within the family? How do you explain to your daughter that her brother is a thief? How do you tell your grandchildren that their father stole from their grandmother? When I got home, I sat in my driveway for a long time before going inside. This house, my house, suddenly felt different, tainted. Every room held memories of Michael growing up here, but now those memories were contaminated by what I knew. The kitchen where I'd taught him to make cornbread now reminded me that he'd put his name on the deed. The living room where we'd watch Saturday morning cartoons was now a room he could legally claim half of. I called my daughter Lisa that evening. Sweet Lisa, who lives in Phoenix with her family and calls me every Wednesday like clockwork. "Mama, that can't be right," she said when I told her what I'd discovered. "Michael wouldn't do that. There has to be some mistake." But I could hear the doubt creeping into her voice as I explained about the lawyer's findings and the documents I'd seen. "Have you talked to Michael about this?" she asked. Talked to Michael, the son who'd been avoiding my calls for weeks. The son who'd moved into a house bought with my money without telling me. The son who'd somehow maneuvered his way onto both property deeds I owned. "He won't take my calls anymore, Lisa. Won't return my messages. It's like I don't exist unless he needs something from me." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the signs I'd missed or ignored. The way Michael had rushed me through signing documents, his insistence on handling everything himself, the vague updates and delayed timelines, the gradual reduction in communication. Looking back, it all seems so obvious, but when you're in the middle of it, when someone you love and trust is telling you one thing while doing another, the truth gets buried under layers of hope and denial. The next morning, I decided to drive by the house Michael had bought with my retirement money, the house he was now living in with his fiancée. I've never seen it before, never even been given the address officially, but Mr. Harrison had included it in the legal documents, so I knew where to go. It was beautiful, a 2-story colonial with white columns and black shutters, perfectly manicured lawn, flower beds that looked professionally maintained, a BMW in the driveway, new by the looks of it. As I sat in my 15-year-old Honda Civic across the street, I realized I was looking at my investment. My $500,000 had bought this house, this lawn, probably that car too. But my name might be on the deed, yet I was sitting outside like a stranger, afraid to even knock on the door. That's when I saw them, Michael and a woman I assume must be Sarah, his fiancée. They were loading boxes into the BMW, laughing about something. He looked happy, relaxed, not like someone who'd recently stolen $500,000 from his elderly mother. not like someone who was dodging phone calls and avoiding family dinners. He looked like a man without a care in the world. I wanted to get out of my car. I wanted to march up that perfectly paved driveway and demand answers. I wanted to see the inside of the house my money had bought. But I couldn't move. All I could do was sit there and watch my son enjoy the life he'd built on the foundation of my financial ruin. Everything I learned about patience, about sacrifice, about trust. It's all in something called the 60-year rule. 9 rules that reverse after 60. I wish someone had given me this 20 years ago. The link is right below this video. Driving away from that house, I made a decision. I was going to fight this, not just for the money, though God knows I needed it, but for something more important: dignity, self-respect, the right to live my remaining years without fear of what my own children might do to me next. Mr. Harrison filed the first papers this week: fraud charges, elder abuse claims, requests for full financial disclosure. Michael will be served within days. Lisa is flying in from Phoenix to support me through the legal process. She's horrified by what her brother has done, but she's standing by me. "Mama," she said, "I'm proud of you for fighting this. What Michael did was wrong, and he needs to face consequences. But here's what nobody tells you about family betrayal. Winning the legal battle doesn't heal the emotional wounds. Even if I get my money back, even if Michael goes to prison, I'll never get back the son I thought I had. The man who stole from me isn't the boy I raised. He's a stranger who happened to share my DNA and know where I kept my important papers. The hardest part is the loneliness. When your own child betrays you at this level, it changes how you see everyone else. If Michael could look me in the eye and lie for months while stealing my life savings, who else might be planning something similar? It makes you suspicious of everyone, paranoid about every interaction. The mailman asking how I'm doing. Is he casing my house? The neighbor being extra friendly. Does she know something I don't? Trust, once shattered, doesn't just heal. It leaves scars that ache when the weather changes. Last Sunday, I made my own dinner for the first time in 15 years. Usually, I'd have been at Michael's table by now, listening to him talk about his week, watching him carve the roast I taught him to cook. Instead, I sat alone with the Stouffer's frozen meal, wondering how I'd missed the signs that my weekly dinner companion was planning my financial destruction. But I'm not giving up. At 82, I've survived a husband's death, raised 2 children as a single mother, worked 43 years as a registered nurse, and put myself through countless challenges. Michael might have taken my money, but he didn't take my strength. He didn't take my will to fight back, and he certainly didn't take my ability to warn other people about what their own children might be capable of. If you're listening to this and you're over 60, please be careful who you trust with your finances, even if it's family, especially if it's family. The people who know you best also know exactly how to hurt you most. They know your weaknesses, your hopes, your fears. They know which buttons to push to make you say yes when you should be saying no. Look at your bank statements every month. Read every document before you sign it. Ask questions even when the answers seem obvious. And if something feels wrong, trust that feeling. Your instincts are usually right, even when your heart wants them to be wrong. The legal process will take months, maybe years. Mr. Harrison warns me that family financial abuse cases are complicated and emotionally draining. But I'm ready for the fight. I have to be, because the alternative is spending my remaining years as a victim, broke and bitter, unable to trust anyone again. Michael took my money, but I won't let him take my spirit. He stole my retirement, but I won't let him steal my dignity. He betrayed my trust, but I won't let that betrayal define the rest of my life. I'm 82 years old, and I'm not done fighting yet. Some battles are worth having, even when the opponent is someone you used to call your baby boy, especially then.